Hello, welcome to the first year MCA course of Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata. I'm Dr. Indrajit Bose and I shall be your course coordinator for this session. This paper is entitled Business English and Communication with a paper code of HU101. In this paper, we are focusing on the forms, genres, and modes of communication, both spoken and written, which is important in the workplace context. I think all of you are aware that once you pass out of this course, you shall be joining the industry. And over there, you will be required to take part in meetings, give business presentations, interact with clients and customers over the phone and in person, and make various other uses of English. You will have to take care of a whole lot of business documentation, which is a part of your professional needs. So to address these uses of English, we have got different modules in your English paper in Business English, where we deal with both spoken and written communication. Today's lecture, Speaking in Business, is lecture 5 in the series and it is a part of Unit 1. Now, let me begin by giving you an example. Let us say that you are taking part in a business meeting in your office. It is your area manager who is speaking to you. By you, I mean, of course, you and your colleagues in the department and other departments. And you are talking about the performance of your product in the last fiscal year. Now, let us say that in the middle of the meeting, the area manager suddenly asks you and one or two of your colleagues to give briefings or to give short presentations regarding the performance of the product in certain sales sectors. So let us suppose that you are in charge of a sector in South Bengal and your colleague in another department is in charge of the sales in North Bengal. So you are asked to give a briefing of how the product has been doing in South Bengal and in North Bengal in the last fiscal year. So you have to give a mini presentation then in the middle of the meeting. So do you think that you will be able to give a good and satisfactory account of the sales of your product if you are not prepared for it? No, certainly that is not possible. One cannot give an impromptu presentation like that. You need to know all about your subject. You need to know how your product has been performing, how the sales have been going. You need to present your data in the form of bar charts, pie charts, or histograms, or other graphs to show the sales curves, whether they have been going up, 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 or they are going down, down, down. So if they are going well, then why have they been going well? And if the sales are not going so well, then what are the factors behind this kind of a dismal performance? Because you will be asked questions. Rest assured, you'll be asked questions about the performance of your product because you are in charge of the sales in that sector. So you will have to answer why. And there are various reasons you will have to give. Again, this needs preparation. So preparation is the key to speaking in public. So today we are going to talk about speaking and various types of speaking in the business context. And we are also going to discuss the various factors which are responsible for confidence in speaking and competence in speaking. So we need discourse competence as well as functional competence. We're also going to look at the nitty-gritty of pronunciation, which is a part of speaking, of course, and how we can overcome the various barriers or problems in speaking. Let us begin. First of all, there is a question of an aim or the setting of a goal. What do you really want to be? Do you want to be a fluent speaker or an accurate speaker? Fluency is regarded as a desirable option or a goal by most people. Now, what exactly is fluency? I think you are familiar with various spoken English courses which are advertised all over the place. We see them on signboards, billboards, hoardings. We see flyers and handbills talking about e-fluency or gain conversational fluency in 6 months, 3 months, 10 weeks, and so on. Now, what exactly is it that these courses are talking about? Is it the ability to speak fast, the ability to speak well, the ability to speak perfect English? In general, I think we can say that any speaker would be regarded as fluent if he or she is able to converse with ease on any topic in any given situation. So it means basically competence in speaking. It does not mean the ability to speak fast. The ability to speak fast is a kind of a practice in speaking, which really anybody can develop at any point of time if they set their minds to it. You cannot do it. But speaking fast doesn't mean that it's going to get additional clarity. In fact, some people might be inconvenienced if you are speaking too extra fast. I myself often find that the executives in call centers who attend to our voice calls, sometimes they speak rather too fast. So it's a bit of an inconvenience putting up with them sometimes. So I even complained once. So the ability to speak fast is not any extra ability, and it does not make for clarity in speaking. Rather, we can say that clarity is a much more important criterion or prerogative as far as speaking competence is concerned. And fluency also lies, more importantly, in the ability to use words and also the pauses and the various other tools of speech in a competent way. So, do you have a good knowledge or a fairly sufficient knowledge of the vocabulary that you are using? In this case, it would of course be business vocabulary. So, are you aware about the words that need to be used? So, can you make a good and professional use of words? Do you have a good knowledge of the idioms, phrasal verbs, and other elements of speech which are used by competent speakers? If somebody uses them, can you understand them? So fluency really lies much more in the ability to use these elements in a competent way. The other aim or goal apart from fluency is accuracy. Now you will not find that the spoken English courses talk about this at all. However, accuracy is much more an important goal than fluency. Rather, it is less talked about, certainly, but it is much more important. What is accuracy? It is the ability to speak correctly with correct pronunciation and grammatical structures. And sadly enough, this is the area that we find that people often going wrong or people have lapses. as far as grammatical structures or the syntax of speech is concerned. Also, there are lots and lots of pronunciation difficulties. Mother tongue influence, various influences of different regional languages, incorrect pronunciation, and so on. Again, I think it is very important to tide over these problems as far as speaking accuracy is concerned, and one needs to be reasonably correct in what one is saying. Otherwise, the purpose of communication and the effectiveness of communication is lost. In fact, if we find that somebody is going wrong in pronunciation or syntax or grammar of speech, then the confidence in the speaker is correspondingly undermined. So we can say that both fluency and accuracy are aims as far as setting a goal in speaking in English in professional situations is concerned. So if you are talking in the workplace or in the business context, what does it mean that you have to be fluent and accurate? Very simply, I think it means is that you know or you have a fairly sufficient knowledge of the way that your professional situations work. Also, that you have a fairly good subject competence or you know something reasonably well about the subject matter of your discussions, deliberations, and exchanges with other people. Also, you know the business vocabulary that is a part of your workplace context or your professional situations. And you are fairly adept at using this vocabulary. So you have got reasonable competence in the handling of words, especially the words that matter over here, the business terms or the terminology that is the hallmark of a professional. Also, that you are reasonably correct in your grammar, the grammar of spoken English, and the syntax and the pronunciation of various terms and expressions. This is what it really means to be a good and fairly proficient speaker in the business context. So, do you think it is far too idealistic or that you cannot approximate this kind of a distant goal? Well, this is the ideal that I'm talking about, and you need to come as close to the ideal as it is possible for you in order to be regarded as a good speaker or a reasonably good speaker in the business context. So you have to put in a lot of practice and effort in order to achieve these goals. However, we will never achieve anything if we do not have fairly good and I might say goals of a fairly high standard. So I think you need to keep these fluency and accuracy in speaking in the business context as your lodestars or your goals in your workplace communication. If you start with that, I don't think you can go wrong. Let us now proceed further and see how we can put these goals into practice in the workplace context. To begin with, I think we can note that, in fact, people suffer from various problems when they are speaking in the workplace or even in general. So it's good to have fairly good goals or reasonably high standard goals, but we also need to be realistic and to note that there are, in fact, various problems that we encounter in our daily interactions with others in the workplace or business context. Often we are at a loss for words, so we are hesitant. People tend to use a lot of fillers. What are fillers? Various kinds of paralanguage, like the expressions So what I was trying to say is that this is the reasonably correct way of going about it. So how did that sound? Not good, did it? So I was using lots and lots of fillers because I was groping for words. I was at a loss for words. The more you are at a loss for words and you cannot fall silent, you will tend to fall back on these fillers. But the more fillers you use, the more hesitant, the more unclear, and the more vague you are going to sound. In order to be crisp and correct, you need to minimize the use of fillers as much as possible. Then there is poor vocabulary. Often you may not be clear about the business terminology or the terms and expressions which you have to use in the workplace context. Or people are not conversant with various terms that they have to use at all. So that would mean a corresponding loss of competence as far as the content of your speech is concerned. So you need to know the right vocabulary and also how to use it. A lot of the time there are weak structures. So there is some kind of grammatical problem, or there are various grammatical errors in the way that you put sentences together. Again, you have to take care of this if such errors are there. And believe me, you can improve a lot if you are conscious of it and you practice. Try to use simple and short sentences to begin with. And if you have a fairly good grasp of what you have to say to others in professional situations, then I think that this problem can be minimized. And of course, there are pronunciation difficulties. A lot of us have a very pronounced influence of the mother tongue when we are speaking, or MTI as it is called. However, in India particularly, there are so many different regional languages, and we don't even know half of these languages. So if there is a pronounced regional accent or influence in the speaking of English, it can again lead to loss of clarity, and the ability to follow or to understand will be reduced. Again, sometimes there are misplaced emphases, or the stress that is placed is given on the wrong place, again leading to loss of meaning or lack of clarity, and low voice quality or tonal poverty. Again, these are basically problems associated with pronunciation. Now, how can we improve on these situations? Because most often, what is going to happen if we suffer from these problems is that we will not be clear, we will not be understood, and it will be difficult for us to make ourselves understood, and even we might suffer from problems in understanding other people. The first step to overcoming these problems as such is, of course, to try and be conscious that you are making these mistakes, or admit to yourself that you are making these mistakes. I think there is some element of ego which acts as a barrier in admitting these problems in the first place. So you have to get rid of that. You see, this is a false sense of self-importance, which is coming in the way of your professional competence. So you have to be competent. It's not a question of ego. So try and understand that you are making mistakes, and you will not reduce your self-image either to yourself or to others if you admit that you are making mistakes. In fact, people will respect you for it. And that the first step to making yourself better is to admit that you are making mistakes. Once you do that, you will be conscious of the mistakes that you are making. And the second stage is precisely this, to be aware of what kind of mistakes you're making. The third stage is to find out how to troubleshoot or to take care of these problems. Now, believe me, however difficult it might seem, it is certainly not impossible to overcome these difficulties or to rectify these errors. For each one, there are different ways in which they can be taken care of. For pronunciation difficulties, you can listen to the correct pronunciation on tape or a CD-ROM and make words where you find you are going wrong and practice saying them. Record yourself, play them over, and make somebody who is good in pronouncing in English listen to you to give them their views of how you are saying it. Watch films in English. Listen to recordings in English. Listen to songs in English and sports commentaries, wildlife programs, and other programs in English. You will certainly pick up the nuances of spoken English much better. And practice, practice, practice. As far as the syntax or the grammar of speech is concerned, if you find that you're going wrong, try and pinpoint exactly where you are going wrong and try and rectify these mistakes. What would be the correct form to use over there? So make corrections yourself. You see, the best way to correct is to correct oneself. So try and make these corrections and try and make the effort to use the correct forms. I think gradually you will find that you'll be able to overcome these errors and problems. So there are various ways of getting to grips with various issues and problems in speaking. And believe me, they can be overcome. So if you are suffering from any of these problems, do not be shy of admitting them and try and correct them by becoming conscious and putting in some extra effort of your own. Believe me, if you are willing to travel and to go that extra mile, you will get the rich rewards of it in the end. Right. To proceed further, provided that we have got reasonable competence in speaking and we have got some kind of correctness also, we have to know how we can become more effective speakers. Because, of course, there is a lot of scope for becoming better, for improving further, further, and further. Effective speaking lies a great deal in knowing when you are to speak. So, promptness. Be ready and prepared to pitch in or to speak whenever you are called upon to do so. In general, if you are nervous, hanging back, or unprepared, and you think you are unprepared, you will be hesitant and you're not going to make an effective contribution if you're called upon to speak. So be prepared and prompt. Respond on cue. If somebody asks you to say something, come forward and say. Your area manager asks you to give a report of the sales, come forward and give it. Don't say, I'm not ready right now. Could you ask somebody to come now and I will come in later? No, don't do that. Don't postpone. Be ready, be prompt. You also need to have, and this is something that you might say that this is a little strange, an attentive audience or people who are listening to you. Why is that? Basically, we tend to speak better if we find that people are really listening to us. Now you might say that, how can I exercise a control over other people? I can try and improve myself, overcome my own problems. But how can I ensure that people are going to listen to me? But believe me, you can. It is you who will make people sit up and listen, or you will make people relax further and further and switch off mentally, if not physically, and stop listening to you. So, do you want to be in that kind of situation that you will put people to sleep or you will make them bored or frustrated? No, I'm sure you do not want to be in that position. So, in order to ensure that your audience is listening to you, respond on cue, be prepared, and speak short and to the point, and speak loud and clear enough so that people can hear you very well. If they cannot hear you very well, if you're inaudible, they will be much less interested in listening to whatever you have to say. Also, make the content sufficiently interesting for them to be able to focus on what you are saying and to get some interest or get a kick out of it. So, give examples, speak lucidly, use less fillers. It is then that you will grasp people's attention, and an attentive audience will ensure that you also are speaking better. Then, of course, your delivery has to be clear. A clear delivery is one of the best means of getting across to an audience, and it is one of the hallmarks of a good speaker. So, how can we ensure a clear delivery? Be focused, be prepared with what you have to say, and speak loudly and clearly with as good a pronunciation as you can master. And try and script your message effectively. If you are not sure about what you have to say, write it down. Jot down certain points so that you have certain helps or you are bolstered by some help before you actually speak. Also, you need to know the kind of speech that you are using or saying, the discourse type. What is discourse type? Is it a congratulatory speech that you are giving to a colleague? Is it a speech in which you are trying to woo an audience? Is it a sales talk? Is it a persuasive speech? Is it a speech in which you are talking about failure and you're trying to point out the reasons for that failure? So these are different types of spoken discourse. And the types are actually much more numerous than what I have given by way of example over here. You need to know all about these types and about how they are to be managed, what makes them work. So you have to know them. So knowing about the different kinds of speech or oral discourse, it's a part of a person's oral competence, professional competence, and you need to have a fairly good knowledge of a repertoire of different spoken or oral discourses. And lastly, but not the least, of course, there is confidence in speaking. So you have to be a reasonably confident speaker. And wherein lies this confidence, of course, apart from the fact that you can use words effectively, you use the right word in the right place at the right time, and you have reasonably good knowledge about your subject, and you can speak well on the occasion as the occasion demands it. So these are certain ways of effective speaking. What more do we have, or what more does speaking involve? Obviously, clarity. This is something that we have already looked at. And the ways of interacting with others, a knowledge of social interactions, business interactions. Let us say that I'm interacting with a client or with a customer who is aggrieved or who has got a problem with a product that I've sold. Now, how will I interact with this customer? The customer is annoyed, the customer is frustrated. So I will have to deal in a suitable way with this kind of customer. I will have to listen carefully. I will have to make appropriate responses so that I do not anger the customer even further. I have to soothe down the customer, as a matter of fact. If I'm speaking to my boss or to my professional colleague in a business situation, of course, I will interact in a different sort of way. So there are different ways in which I can interact. If I'm trying to sell something to a customer, well, then I will interact in a further different kind of way. So there are all different ways of interacting, and I have to know what these are. And we have to have a fairly good knowledge of vocabulary, grammar, knowledge of the language functions like accepting a request, making a request, apologizing, complaining, and so on. And of course, the confidence. That's a part of speaking. We have to say that again and again. Now, how to become an effective speaker? The first thing is to have a fairly good control over yourself. Now, how can we have this self-control? That means that you know your subject well, you can handle your audience reasonably well, and if you develop any kind of problems when you are speaking, which might happen at any point of time, the technology goes wrong, or something fails, or you had expected something and that doesn't turn out. So there can be all kinds of problems. If you have these problems, you will not get jittery, but you will still manage to say whatever you have to say effectively till the end. So that kind of control is needed. Also, let's say that your audience asks you questions, and some of these questions are very hostile or negative kind of questions, but you still don't snap out of your cool. You don't lose your calm. So again, that is a matter of control over oneself. If you are a good speaker, you will have this sort of control also. Also, the ability to capture your audience, as I have already said, that part of your professional competence lies in the fact that you can grasp the audience's attention and to hold it for a sufficient length of time. You see, how much people will really focus and listen to you, that is limited. The attention span of an audience is limited. Some people say 3 minutes, some people say 5 minutes. Well, you have to hold their attention for that length of time so that they do not do something else, so that they do not start playing games on their mobiles, or they do not start sending WhatsApp messages or get busy with other tasks. Also, you have to know your topic. Obviously, this is the first thing to start off with, and plan what you have to say in advance. And know the rules of grammar and syntax and be aware of pronunciation. Now, what are the different types of business conversations taking place in the workplace context? There are briefings or short speeches that we have to give, which are a kind of a summary, or which involve giving or posting brief summaries about information that is important, like a briefing about the launch of your new outlet in Kolkata, or a briefing about air traffic and the problems that your clients are having in coming to and fro to Kolkata from other business destinations like Hyderabad and Mumbai in India. So a briefing would mean that you give a short, informative speech or talk about some subject. Inquiries and appointments. Again, these are various things that we have to do all the time in the workplace context, like make inquiries about products, when they are being sold, about discounts, prices, and so on. And making appointments, again, that is something that we have to do when we call up people to fix the date and time and place sometimes for having a meeting or some other professional interaction or consultation. Again, there are sales talks, which are very important. I've already referred to them, and how you make people listen to you or persuade them to buy the products or services that you are talking about. Again, this is a part of business strategy and part of business speaking. Customer interactions, both spoken in terms of person to person interaction or face to face, and telephonic interaction. This is taking place all the time when we are interacting with customers over the phone, registering complaints, giving troubleshooting help, and so on. So again, this is very important. And there is also a plethora of small talk, like talk during the lunch break among colleagues, small chat during meetings, and informal spaces. Talk over a business dinner or lunch. So tea time talk. So all this is taking place all the time. These are different kinds of business conversations that are taking place. So what about the informal exchanges? They can take place at various situations, like at a party that your boss is giving to give a farewell to a colleague, or when you are dining out with a client or customer, for example, so you're having a meal at a restaurant, or when you are even at a supermarket, and various other contexts and situations. So basically, a lot of business terms and expressions may not come in if it's an informal exchange, but other functions of speech will be important over there. And basically, it is an exchange that takes place when we are interacting with somebody in an informal context or situation. And basically, the information that we are sharing is important for us at that point of time, or it is important in the immediate context. Functional competence involves the knowledge of the language functions, like making or accepting requests, declining requests to people, apologizing, asking questions, giving suggestions. You have to know what sort of language to use when you are saying all this. And of course, saying all this is very, very important. For example, if I make requests, I can use phraseology like, would you please tell me the way to the cash counter? Or would you please hold the call while I get the message? Please get me the chief accountant on the extension, would you? I can politely decline by saying, I'm sorry, but I cannot accept your offer. I'm really sorry, but I can't help you. Or I can say, I'm afraid I can't help you over the charge price. Again, for apologizing also, we can say something like this. Please do accept our sincere apologies for the delay in service. Or, I'm really sorry about the loss you have suffered. So you need to use these phrases and expressions in a careful way. For asking questions, I can say things like, what is the next part of the report about, please? Or when is the next meeting? What was the call about? Who is dealing with customer complaints? Where will the new outlet open? Or I can make suggestions like, I would like to propose a fresh plan. Perhaps a new approach would be better. I think it would be advisable to adopt a new growth strategy. I would like to suggest a more cost-effective solution. It would be preferable to having a more expensive outlay. So The use of appropriate language structures also is important, and most important over here is to know the proper tense forms, the use of conditionals and modals. For example, I can say that the managing director said in his report that the reimbursement of health expenses of in-service mariners was a recurring cost to the company and would be discontinued. Or I can say something when I'm using modals. If he saw and conditionals, if he saw the necessity of providing monitoring support, he would do so. If only the director spoke to the area manager, he would come to know the crisis brewing. Or the cafeteria might be serving lunch at 2 p.m. He may go there after the meeting. So I need to use this carefully. I need to be very careful about the use of the tenses also. Of course, discourse competence. Know your subject. Know the speech functions and types and the occasion when you are speaking and for how long you will be speaking. So the sense of timing is very important to begin and end on the right note and to try and draw the audience into your subject. For pronunciation, speak clearly and distinctly and follow standard usages as far as pronunciation is concerned. And if you are speaking to a global audience, maybe you would need a little bit of adaptation to suit your audience. Proper tonal variations, stress patterns need to be used. The most important communication goal as far as pronunciation is concerned is to try and make others understand what you are saying, and you also try and understand what they are saying. Now, in today's business environment, there are a lot of global partnerships and cross-cultural exchanges taking place. A lot of cultural spillovers are happening. Now, language, it's a part of the culture and it's a part of the business interactions. So when we use language, we also carry the baggage of culture. In fact, there are a variety of speech and pronunciation differences between people all talking in English from different parts of the world. So we have to be aware of these differences. We have to empathize with others, never try to belittle others as far as their spoken proficiency is concerned. Also, we need to be empathetic and to try and adapt to other cultural groups. So if somebody is speaking with a different kind of pronunciation, and I find that my pronunciation is totally at variance with what they are saying, then I will have to speak in a way that they don't find it stands out or it is offensive in any way whatsoever. So try to blend in as much as possible and don't stick out like a sore thumb as much as possible. So that's a very commonplace way of ending, but I'm sure you will agree with me that the modern day business context or the workplace context is becoming more and more multicultural. And in this multicultural environment, we have to adapt, we have to blend in, and we have to carry on our functions of everyday speech in professional subjects and in professional situations. So I hope that you will be benefited by this lecture and that you will learn about certain ways and methods of speaking and being a more effective speaker in the business context in the future. So we will be talking more about this subject later. So for now, it's goodbye from me. So thank you.